And next up, speaking of obstacles and overcoming them, we have Wilbur Ho from Amgen. Good morning, Wilbur.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Are you enjoying the conference so far? It's a bit strange.
Oh, it's been great. Great. Lots of good speaker. Glad that we get a chance to do this virtually this year.
You haven't answered my question from my last email to you, and one of the things that you wanted the audience to know about you was that you've climbed Everest.
I did, yeah.
And how far up the mountain did you go? Did you go right all the way up, or?
No, I didn't. I made to about 7,000 meters, and it took me about 2 months to do so. It was definitely one of the most physically challenging things and mentally challenging things that I've had to do in my life.
Excellent, very interesting. And so, overcoming obstacles then is part of your modus operandi. And I think one of that would be, how do you keep production going while, you need to make changes to your MES.
Correct. Yeah.
And that is the theme of your case study this morning.
Yeah. Okay. So perhaps can I maybe just share my screen with everyone here? Let me know if you guys can see it.
We see it. You're gonna put it in presentation mode.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. All right. Should I go ahead and get started?
Yep.
Okay. Great. So first of all, pleasure and an honor to be here to present this case study. A little bit of introduction for myself. I'm currently the Director of Strategy and Business Performance for Amgen Singapore. My previous role is actually the Director of Manufacturing. So my point of view here is towards the business side or the user side of MES. Today, I just want to share with everyone an innovation that we embarked on in 2019 on how do we maximize production time during an MES system upgrade, right? So if you think about the traditional paradigm of how we do an upgrade is, typically we have a scope of work that we have to do, whether that be upgrading the hardware, servers, or the software that runs into it. And then we have to look for a downtime on the production schedule to execute this upgrade, right? And that's very expensive. If you think about the industry that we're in, and I believe most of us is in that situation where we're making, high value pharmaceuticals, biopharmaceuticals. The production downtime can be very, very costly, right? Easily up in the millions. So in Amgen, we really believe that there's a better way to do this. And we wanted to maximize the production time while we execute this upgrade. And so today, I'll share a little bit of the why we did it and the how that we did it. And hopefully everyone in the audience can take away a little bit from our experience. It was certainly a first for Amgen, and we believe it's one of the first in the industry as well. But of course, if folks in the audience have experience in this area, we'd be more than happy to discuss this to advance this together, right? So let me maybe perhaps just go to an executive summary of what we did. So in 2019, we had a scope of work to upgrade our system. It was both a software upgrade to go from MES version, we used VRM PASIX, which is version 3.1.5 to 3.1.8. And at the same time, we also have hardware upgrade. So software upgrade, Windows was getting obsolete. So we had to upgrade our system, right? So from our initial estimate, it was just the upgrade work itself was going to require 5 days of downtime, right? And in order for us to get to 5 days of downtime, and just because of the way that biopharmaceutical, the cycle time is very long, and I can get to it in the next slide. we will need to essentially shut down the production for about 4 to 6 weeks to create this 5 days window, right? So obviously that's very expensive. It's very complex for all the teams that is involved. And maybe some of you guys have been in that conversation previously. Asking for production downtime is never an easy conversation, right? In any highly utilized, high value production facility, right? So we really then just start asking ourselves the question: can we do this in a better way, right? Is there, we start kind of challenging ourselves. What else can we do here to keep our production batches running and do the upgrade, right? We realize that the upgrade is certainly very important, right? I think in the environment that we're in today, cyber resilience and protecting ourselves against cyber risk is very high on our priority list, which means that our software and our hardware have to be patched, have to be up to date. So that's a driver that we really need to advance on. So how do we really do both at the same time, right? So I'll go through a little bit of the how in a little bit. And we created this new innovation, and now basically we're doing this for the other sites in the Amgen network, right? So we have many sites around the world, and many of them make drug substance, drug product in the biopharmaceutical world, and we now have a blueprint to upgrade while production is running and create even more value for these other sites in the network, right? So we feel that that's definitely a win-win for the site, and we're quite proud of this achievement. So when you think about the concept of how do you do an upgrade while production is running, there's two approaches to it, or two concepts that you have to think about, right? So the first one is really finding the right production window, right? You want to pick a time when the complexity is manageable to execute this change. So right here on this screen, I have a very kind of typical biopharma schedule where you have a fairly long upstream process, right? Overall, the days for one whole cycle, could be in the neighborhoods of 40 days to 60 days, right? For this entire train, right? And of that, the majority of it is going to be your upstream, right? And then, the back half of that, the second half is the downstream, right? So when we start looking at the complexity of the process, we feel that, downstream is actually more complex in the way that we use the MES system, right? Upstream, of course, still has its own complexity, but it's probably manageable, right, with the right controls in place, right? So first of all, that's the first thing that we did is we assessed the system complexity, and then we said, hey, downstream is just a little too complicated, a little too much risk. So then we created a window where we didn't have any downstream operations, right? So we only have upstream operations running. We felt that that's a time where we can, take down MES and whilst, maintain our GMP control over our processes, right? The other, I would say, enabler for us is that the Singapore Amgen facility is a fully single-use facility, right? So because of that, we have less complexity. We don't have as many cleaning operations. We don't have as many transfer, as many steaming operations. So just because of that simplicity, we were able to sort of fully leverage the single-use technology flexibility for this upgrade. And then, how do we manage the GMP aspects of it, right? So while the system is down for the upgrade, we developed shop floor protocols for each one of these upstream batches, so we can, maintain the GMP aspect of it and ensure the overall execution of these batches, right? So the first part is really about finding the right production window, understanding where your complexity is, and then setting that target, right? So that's the first side. The other prong to this approach or concept is that, because we want to do it together with the production time, we will have to shrink the upgrade to as short as possible, right? Do it as fast as possible and do it right the first time, right? So for that, we actually deployed some OE methodology. What you're seeing on the screen here is actually what we call a single minute exchange of die. It's a very common, it's an OE method to actually shrink down shutdown time, right? In fact, you see it being used for Formula One racing car on how they do pit lane changes. So with that, so we ran this OE methodology over about 200 plus system upgrade tasks, right? By doing things like pulling in an extra server and upgrading it ahead of time, and then swapping it in, so we shortened the downtime. Doing things like that, we were able to accelerate the duration by 40% from its original plan, right? So original plan, we were budgeting for about 5 days, and eventually after this exercise, we had a plan that we can execute in 3 days, right? So really kind of shrinking it down and getting to a highly executable plan for everyone to get behind, right? So those are the two-prong approach, right? Finding the right production window and shrinking the upgrade time to as short as possible so that you can fit it into this production window. So this is actually some maybe key takeaways right now that we've got the concepts, and then the next thing is how do we actually execute this project, right? How do we actually roll this out, right? So I would say that the first step is really, obviously, you need to start from the top, right? You need partnerships and stakeholder alignment with our quality unit, with our site heads to get that high level buy-in. So having that since day one was definitely crucial for us. And then the second part is really getting our plans in place, right? Preparing the shop floor protocols. In some cases where the MES actually do some calculation for us, we actually validated new software in lieu of the MES to perform this calculation, right? So that our shop floor people doesn't have to go through that themselves. And yeah, so with this, I call it sort of the nuts and bolts of how we're going to execute it. We had to kind of think about that all ahead of time, right? And get all those ready, right? And then the third step is really a little trial runs, a little bit of wet runs. So in this case, we did have some trial runs of proof of concept testing where we tried out, the paper protocols, the validated softwares. Even though that the plan typically doesn't, of course, run on paper, it runs on MES, paper on glass, right? So we have to, make sure that everybody understand the criticality of good documentation practice, and then how do we really execute these protocols. So, we ran some proof of concept testing to ensure that people understood, right? And then as we get closer and closer to the upgrade, things change, right? Last minute things change, right? So the production schedule that we kind of originally thought was going to happen, there was some last minute changes. So we have to make some adjustment on the fly and really provide that hypercare on the floor to make sure that, folks understand what needs to happen during that upgrade window. Okay. Finally, it's the actual upgrade itself, right? So during those 3-day period where we upgrade the system while production is running, it was pretty much an all hands on deck type of collaboration, right? You have on one side, you have the IT or the IS team, if they're executing the upgrade. And then at the same time, you have the shop floor, they are executing these protocols and keeping all 11 batches running. Right, so that was a really a big one team collaboration effort to execute the plans that we have to carry out this upgrade. So you know, a lot of teamwork and a lot of leadership was needed to ensure that happened. Right. Okay, so in summary, we feel that we have achieved a new paradigm in upgrading our MES system, right? The traditional way of just stopping production and taking this big, you know, productivity hit is a thing of the past, right? We feel that even for this major upgrade where we have to take down both software and hardware, we can do it without slowing down production. And you know, we were able to achieve the on-time execution without any delay. We didn't had any delays in batch dispositions and the cycle time that is associated with it. And this new approach, you know, we were able to kind of utilize that in not just in ASM, not just in Singapore, sorry, in many other sites in the Amgen network, right? You know, and maybe a part of the lessons learned is that thinking longer term is that typically plants have utility shutdown, right? So every, you know, 3 to 5 years or so, you will have a plant shutdown to maintain the utility system, right? You know, so just thinking longer term is that perhaps, you know, we want to think more holistically about these other drivers for plant shutdown, right? So instead of having a separate shutdown for MES or Delta V or these automation system or computer system, you want to do those together, right? So that you already have a downtime in the production plan to execute the MES upgrade. And you wouldn't have to take another cost just to execute the upgrade. Now that might mean that you might lose out on a few years in the life cycle of MES. However, that will be easier on execution and not have to really, you know, cause multiple shutdown for the plant, right? So this is just some lessons learned for us. That, you know, if we were to do it all over again, you know, what would we do to make it better? Okay. All right. With that, that's all the slides that I have today. Any questions, comments, discussions?
Thank you, Wilbur. We have one question from the floor. Basically, it said, I guess they're asking when you were in the middle of your upgrade, right, and there was some disruption. Did you go back? Did you use a paper-based record system to bridge the downtime
Correct.
of the system?
Yes, correct. Yeah, we did have a paper-based system. So, you know, Amgen's approach is that even though we're fully sort of paper on glass, fully MES, we did maintain a contingency system, right? A contingency paper-based system in the event that we have some unplanned or emergency downtime for the MES, right? So we've had that paper-based system maintained all along. However, right, our folks were not used to executing on the paper system, right? So we had to kind of retrain folks.
Yes.
We had to, right, you know, because it's for emergency purpose, right? So now
Exactly.
we're asking them to do this for 3 days, right? And then we want to do it in a planned, predictable way. So we had to do a lot more sort of training and getting people up to speed on how do we use the paper system, right? So I think it's you know, we're a bit lucky in the sense that we've maintained that all along the way as a contingency. I know some companies who went MES might not have maintained that, but I think in hindsight, it's of course good for contingency, and second of all, for cases like this where we had literally millions of dollars at stake. It's good to have that, right? It gives us flexibility to execute our GMP production even when the system is down.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, because I've been in other places where it's the reverse has happened, whereby they're implementing MES and they have to get rid of a paper-based system, and they're unwilling to switch, and people are are so used to the paper-based system that they are worried about the digital system. It's hilarious. It's very funny. It's really, people are just creatures of habits. Yeah, it's really about disrupting and changing those mindsets.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think our four, of course, they're used to the electronic system, right? That's what they use day to day. But so we had to, as part of this project, we had to really get them on board and give them some trial of the paper system. Yeah.
Very good. Well, Wilbur, thank you for your time. Thank you for your presentation.
You're
I hope
welcome.
you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So our next speaker